All right. Well, everyone, good morning and welcome to the InPower coffee break. We have this every Tuesday at 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific. And I'm Mary Brody, and I work with Dana Theus, who is also on the call today. She's the president and CEO of InPower Coaching. I work on the marketing user experience, and I help out with the show. The show covers women's workplace issues, from emotional intelligence and workplace corporate culture and how to survive, thrive in the workplace. And today we're going to have a conversation with Dana about people skills for the technology industry and STEM. So before I introduce Dana, give her a more proper introduction and begin the interview, I just want to invite you into the conversation. We're going to do a quick interview so you get to know a little bit more about Dana and the topic, and then we're going to open it up for discussion and hope that you come online either on video and join us through the call or through chat and ask questions and offer your opinions. So if you want to join the call, click call in and I'll let you in at the appropriate time. So to get started and do the introduction, this is Dana Theus. She's president and CEO of InPower Coaching. She is a values-based consultant, coach, and advocate for employee engagement and women's leadership strategies that produce business results. In launching InPower Women, a 2013 Forbes 100 website for women, she founded her message of empowerment resonating strongly with mid-level and executive women and men. She has been featured on the Huffington Post, the National Journal's Next America, Smart Brief on Leadership, and Switch and Shift. And she's gained a warm reception as a motivational speaker to women's groups. Dana is also a regular host for Executive Leaders Radio, the #1 business talk show in the Mid-Atlantic states. And as you probably also know, she founded InPower Coaching and InPower Women. And she did this to provide a safe place for leaders to share empowered strategies to use the workplace as a place for personal growth and professional success. Everyone at InPower Coaching is dedicated to supporting women and men and finding their authentic, gender-informed leadership voice. So welcome, Dana.
Well, nice to be here.
So today we're going to talk a little bit about your course, the people skills people skills for the technology industry and STEM. And just to kind of get us started, why don't you give us an overview of your course?
So I think the course you're talking about is actually a webinar, right?
Okay.
That's the one you mean?
Yes.
It's about a 45-minute webinar. It's recorded. It's free up on the website. Just go to InPowerCoaching.com, and under featured programs, you'll see people skills for the tech industry, and you can register and watch the webinar right there. But the essential message, I guess you could say, of the webinar is that I believe that the tech industry underinvests in helping its leaders gain good people skills, in part because there's so much to learn on the technical side, and in part because, you know, if you can't stay up with the technology and the knowledge and your skills and all that kind of stuff, you know, there's just so much value you can offer that a lot of people don't get around to the people skills. On the other hand, people skills are what really allow technology companies in the industry to succeed. So in an effort to sort of bring that to, bring people skills forward, you know, we put on the webinar. And the webinar is really people skills in the literature. People skills is called emotional intelligence.
Okay.
And there's a big misunderstanding about what emotional intelligence is, in my opinion, especially in the tech industry. And I'm going to turn this on you because you've got better stories than I do in some cases. But you know, emotional intelligence, most people think, oh, well, that means you have emotions, you know, you're happy, you're sad, you're glad, you know, and that's not really what emotional intelligence is. Emotional intelligence, everybody has emotions. But emotional intelligence is understanding how to read them in yourself and in others, knowing what to do with them,
right?
How to, you know, use them to motivate yourself and other people, and being self-aware, and being able to, you know, kind of see what's happening through the lens of people's emotional lives. And emotions are really important. We can't function without them, literally. We can't make decisions without them. So emotional intelligence and people skills is mostly about becoming aware of that and acknowledging the importance that feeling self, not just the happy sadness, but the feelings that we have, even when they're kind of hard to read, acknowledging how important that is and integrating that into your understanding of your own work and how you perform well and how you help other people perform well. And particularly if you're in a management capacity, the higher you go in any organization, but especially in technology companies, the less knowing the latest technical widget is important, and the more important it is to understand how people work, because it's people who are working with that technology to make it really sing and come to the fore. So the webinar, to answer your question, is about that and about providing people insight into the kinds of challenges that not being aware of people skills creates. We express our people skills through communication. So quite often we see this through communication, both when it works and when it doesn't. So it's talking about giving some scenarios and examples of that, what was really going on when you looked at the situation through the emotional intelligence lens. And then I give a simple 90-10 rule for how to start to become more emotionally intelligent.
So tell me a little bit more about the 90-10 rule. Is it always 90-10, or is there a little bit of an 80-20 or a 70-30? What is it all about? What do you mean by 90-10?
So 90-10 refers to my observation, particularly in technology companies, but I think everything I'm saying is true for every industry and everybody, but technology companies kind of have their own unique challenges, which we can talk about here in a minute. Yeah. So the 90-10 rule is basically a rule of thumb that if you're looking at any situation, you're in a meeting or you're looking at a project and how the project's going to be, how the project is going to come together, whatever your situation, if it involves people, you have to assume that you're only seeing 10% of the dynamics that are going to most affect your success, and that 90% is hidden, not just from you because there's something wrong with you. It's just that 90% is going to happen. The success is dependent on things that happen within individuals and between individuals. And so you have to be looking for that 90% to see it. This is a paradigm thing, right? So put your 90-10 paradigm glasses on and recognize that 90% of what can make you successful or fail is largely unseen, and then go looking to see it. When you see people talking, when you're communicating with other people, be asking yourself on here, what am I assuming that may be incorrect? What are they assuming that may be incorrect, et cetera? So that's the 90-10 rule. And you're referring to the challenge we got on the webinar about, is it really 90-10? Come on, 90%'s a lot. And my answer to that is, in reality, it's probably more like 70-30 or, 65-35. Right. But in my experience in technology companies, and I grew up like the first 20 years of my career, if not more, were in technology businesses and industries. There's such a lack of appreciation in the culture for this human dynamic that in a lot of technology companies, it is 90%, because like 90% is simply unacknowledged. So your job is to make it, to become good at 90% and turn it more into like 65% for you and your team.
Yeah, it's kind of, because there's other questions I want to ask, but one thing I just want to point out that occurred to me while I was talking to you, with technology being everywhere today, right? And starting to become, it's not special anymore, right? Everyone uses technology. Everyone encounters it somehow in their job. And then also with more collaborative work environment where we're no longer in an area where it's programmers just sitting down doing their thing. They're working with other people. And it's definitely more people interacting to get their information out so that they can build things. So that's where I'm like looking at your course and I'm like, wow, I'm like, that really has an impact with that. Like what you're talking about has an impact on those types of points and how technology is emerging.
Yeah, well, you're right. Technology is everywhere. When I first started professionally at a technology company, I was the only one in my office that used email. Oh, wow. I was at EDS, this was a million years ago, and I had an international portfolio, so I had to deal with the people overseas. So I used email because they used email. Nobody else did, and it was possible to be in a technology company without using technology. Today, the reverse is true. It doesn't matter what company you're in, like you said, or what industry. You've got a smartphone, you've got email, you've got computer systems and applications that you have to keep up. So even the most, quote, low tech company has a lot of high tech businesses in it. And we all interact with software, and we all interact with customer service and support, which are using software and are, supporting us on software. So it really is hard to get around this. And I think the other thing that's important to remember is technology is fundamentally very abstract.
True.
How you go on the internet and type in a query and Google delivers it to you from some, Belarusian database, is a real mystery to most of us. And that abstraction introduces a level of complexity into our communication that human communication is challenging enough as it is, right?
Right.
But when we're talking about things that are so abstract and hard to point at and hard to demonstrate and hard to talk about, it's really easy to start miscommunicating, and your emotional intelligence skills are really necessary when you're dealing with those technology things. So you had some good examples too, though. I know you want to ask me questions, but when you were watching the webinar, what were you thinking of? What were you remembering?
My life
about your exactly.
I go through this too often, and there's things even from I would say another phenomena with it too is texting, even though it's indirect with technology, because people don't always fully express their thoughts, and sometimes people say things and they're you just want to and that's why sometimes I think people do this and then just type yes, because I think they calm down and realize someone may have said it wrong. They might have used the wrong word. You're not hearing their voice. And then also in different situations. I know there's one example. Yeah, I think it's my favorite of when I thought everyone understood what I was talking about. And it was for really, it's more long distance remote working in virtual environments, but I think it kind of gets to the point of technical communications. Sending out a diagram to everyone, assume that they read the email, not walking them through it. I learned a valuable lesson. You have to walk people through everything, even though they read everything, you still have to walk them through it. Calling up the developer, telling her some great development I found out about this feature that I've been talking about for forever. I sent you an email about it the other day. And she was like, what feature? What are you talking about? And after a terrible conversation, call up someone else hey, that feature? And she said the same thing. What feature? And I'm like, oh my God, what happened? And it really was about making sure you can't just depend on the technology and that people will read the stuff, and you have to add the human element to make sure everyone's walked through it. Everyone understands what's going on. We also are able to see it. I think that's another component I've always noticed. The diagram helps because, like you said, it's abstract. No one knows how to describe it. Everyone has a different language. I've noticed that too. People have different words.
You're absolutely right. And actually, so here's something that I learned. I learned it when I became a coach, but I had begun to understand it beforehand. And it speaks to that example you're talking about, where you send a message and you just assume everybody's read it. Right. Which is, you can never assume anything, basically. Right. If you just don't assume anything when it comes to other people, you're usually on your best footing. But my point was going to be that even when they have read it, you got three levels of abstraction. First of all, the topic you're talking about, if it's technical or complicated at all, is abstract and challenging. Secondly, each technology has strengths and weaknesses. So text is good for focus and brevity. It's not good for elaboration and context unless you're really good at texting and you have a good relationship. Email, a little more high fidelity. Think in terms of fidelity. How much information is getting through? Text, not very much. Although emoticons can be effective. Email is higher fidelity, phone is higher, and in-person is highest. Right. Now, that doesn't mean in-person is always best. Sometimes when you want people to focus on very specific things, it's actually good if you give them an email or a text that's very specific. But remember, they're emotional beings. And if it appears rude, that emotion is going to get in the way of their ability to absorb that focused message. And then there's another piece, which is people are different. We learn differently. We take information in differently. You know, people say, well, I'm a visual learner and I'm an auditory learner. Baloney, you're everything. You know, we are all visual and auditory. And, you know, we have all these different ways. That's why, you know, adult learning theory now says, give them everything. Give them video, give them audio, give them the ability to read, give them the ability to, you know, interact interpersonally. All of that is necessary. And when it comes down to it, the way you know a person has absorbed what you're saying is they can say it back to you in a way that's meaningful to you. That's the only emotionally intelligent way you know you got through. So there's a trick. You know, you're sending this information, show up at the meeting, you sent that email, you know, what did you get out of the email? I want to give a review, but, you know, tell me what you got out of the email. Well, I didn't read the email. Or, well, I read it. I got A, B, C. But I was really writing about D, A, B, you know, F. So let me just start over. And literally ask them to tell you what they understand about it. And that's how immediately you know what they got.
Yeah, usually I get crickets. Like, hey, did you guys read it? Nah.
Well, that's, yeah. If you ask them if they read it, you're asking a yes/no question. You're putting them on the spot. If you say, I've sent emails, we've talked about this before, you know, what do you guys understand about the challenge that we have and some of the solutions we're going to talk about in today's agenda? And some of them may say, well, I didn't read the email, but, you know, I did talk to Bob in the hall. But the point is, they're telling you where they're at, and then you know where to start.
Okay.
So that's the emotional intelligence piece, which is don't put them on the spot, but try to get them to give you a sense of where they're at.
Okay. So I have a question about emotional intelligence, because I think one challenge that sometimes happens in the technology industry specifically, because I've encountered this actually a few times, someone who has and it's on the emotional intelligence side along that continuum of autism, where they might not necessarily be completely autistic, but they might be more on the Asperger side. How does that work? How does this work with them and helping them be a little more aware? Because I know that's a challenge. And then also for you to be aware, because I know I've dealt with people with varying levels, and I have to definitely adjust my expectations and how I communicate with them so that, you know, we have a good experience. Let's put it that way.
That's a good way of putting it. We did discuss this on the webinar too. And the research, I've only done a little research in this. It is a factor. Being anywhere on the autistic spectrum is a factor for everything. But when it comes to emotional intelligence, here's how to think about it. Emotional intelligence isn't necessarily about being really good at reading people's emotions. It's about being aware that emotions are a factor and making the effort to factor that in. The more you, as a rule for human beings, we're built in, we have emotions, and we have an ability to express our emotions and to read emotions in others. Now, the farther you get on the spectrum, the more that ability becomes challenged. So, my understanding from the research I read is that most people who are functional in the workplace are able to function enough to understand that they have these challenges and that impacts how they deal with people. So that is an expression of emotional intelligence, to know that, you know, there's a factor that other people are expecting things from you that are not natural for you to give, and vice versa. Understanding that is a sign of emotional intelligence. So my advice to working with those people, or if you are one of those people, is kind of amp up your awareness that this is a factor. So if that person is on your team, you know, find a way without blame or shame to acknowledge it to everybody, and to have that person acknowledge it, and to make that person feel okay with it. Maybe give it a sign, you know, okay, you know, let's talk about this through Bob's lens, you know. And the point is to acknowledge it so that it's not hidden and we're not trying to ignore it, because that's how it blows up.
Right.
And recognize Bob is going to see things differently. That's part of the strength he has in being able to be good on the team, in his function, probably. He's probably a pretty good technologist because he can really focus. Let's acknowledge that Bob's really bringing some real talent, and then to get that talent fully into the team, we have to, work this extra level to be able to communicate effectively with Bob and have Bob communicate with us.
Right.
And then I'll tell you the whole thing, it's 90-10, right? Like, I don't know the solution to Bob because it's different than it is for Sue, and it's different than it is for you, it's different than it is for me. Every individual is a different emotional intelligence challenge. But when you take that beginner's mind, 90%, okay, there's 90% I'm not seeing here. I'm good at it with Sue and Jim and Cindy, but Bob's a challenge, so I'm going to start over. I'm just going to start looking for the 90% I'm not seeing and ask Bob to do the same. And we will find out, what the way to communicate with Bob is. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it does, because it's bringing up to, I'll notice sometimes in technology environments, there'll be a perception that will get everyone else to agree, and then we kind of just ignore that, the problem person. And that's how it's labeled. This is a problem person. We don't know what to do with that.
Actually, that's really true. And actually, so this goes back to something that I try to make visually clear in the webinar, which is that technology processes have to be really well thought out, streamlined. We get to point A, and then we get an approval, and we go to point B. And those processes are there to help us align. But when things go wrong with the process, and they go wrong for 1,000 reasons, our human nature way is to blame somebody. And then it's the people that become the problem.
Right.
And that's like emotional intelligence 101. The people aren't the problem, they're the solution. People all bring strengths and abilities to help fix problems, so focus on that. And don't put all your energy on the problem, because that just drives people into their, I need to be right, or, let's turn this into a fight. I mean, withhold approval until you make me feel good. That happens.
So yeah, I know sometimes that'll be a discussion too, because sometimes with technology, there is a better and worse approach. So there is that need to be right. I know this, I'm alluding to one of your courses. But I don't know if you want to talk a bit about that, the need to be right and its impact on a team. And how people respond to that. Like, because all you need is one. And the whole team has to figure out, how do I respond to this one?
Yeah. Okay, well, the need to be right is terrible in a team. Just basically, that's the rule. But you're kind of bringing us to another topic we covered in the webinar, and then when you sign up for the webinar, you have the option to get some other materials, and this is one of them, which is one of the things that makes it hard for us to see the 90% is that we have our own filters. And our filters they come with who we are and our experiences to date, and they tend to fall into 3 categories. One is unconscious judgment. One is the need to be right, but also the need to have a particular outcome. If we don't get approval on this date, I have failed. Right. And what if you get approval a day earlier? What if it's a day later, but it actually helps you save 2 days in the next, there's you got to be flexible and stuff. And then finally, emotional triggers, which is where you're just triggered. Sometimes needing to be right is a function of just being triggered. And to the point where you're so focused on your trigger, your energy, your emotional energy is going into your trigger. You're not focused on resolving the conflict, right, or, achieving the meeting agenda, whatever. And those kind of filters, they require emotional intelligence to see. And then as you learn to develop them, release your triggers, postpone judgment until you've gotten all the information, release your need to, have a particular outcome and be flexible. You're actually expanding and growing your emotional intelligence. As you work with those things to release your filters, you become more emotionally intelligent, because now those filters are off and you can see what's happening more objectively and more clearly.
Interesting.
And if you take the webinar, we can walk you through that.
Yeah, no, because I think sometimes, especially, it's characteristic of technology environments, I think, because there is a better approach. And sometimes there is a right way of doing something. I know that might sound bad, but there sometimes is. And I sometimes there will be the one who wants to be right. And sometimes they are, sometimes they're not, right? And if they are right and we all go along, hey, that life is great, right? But then there's sometimes, no, that doesn't necessarily happen.
Actually, so you're bringing up something that in our last coffee break show last week, Mary Schaefer brought up, which I love. And that is that when someone's being difficult, even if they don't have to be right, let's say, if someone's being difficult, one of the ways that you can begin to get the relationship onto better footing is to make them right. In other words, they may be wrong about something important, but they're right about something. Find the thing they're right at or about, and start from there and acknowledge their rightness in that area, and then bring them into a larger conversation about the other things that they're kind of not seeing. Because usually when someone has to be right, they're stuck because there's some emotional trigger where they don't feel appreciated, they don't feel acknowledged, whatever. And so when you begin to appreciate and acknowledge them, they begin to soften up. And this just goes to what you and I talked about before, which is in general, in most organizations, people don't feel acknowledged and appreciated enough.
That's true.
Period.
Yeah. And that gets round circle to emotional intelligence, knowing also you can pick up they're not feeling this way. They're feeling like on the team, they're contributing, but they're not receiving the feedback that they want. They don't get it. They're not accepting it because they're not used to it. And it's this whole cycle that spirals.
Well, and there's also an assumption most of us carry. If you ever read Dan Pink's Drive, brilliant book, and it makes the point that most of our business culture assumes the only thing that motivates people is money and recognition.
Yes,
and title,
that's
promotion.
True.
And in reality, people are motivated by many, many, many things, including the ability to be autonomous, to be creative, and to feel valuable, basically. So when you start looking to motivate people with those things, they're free. You might have to remove your own triggers and your own judgments, but those are free ways to be motivating and acknowledging people around you and yourself. So I highly recommend it.
Yeah, you're bringing up something really interesting because it made a huge impact on me. It was a meetup, and they were talking about it's like, I guess there's a group that meets about conscious capitalism, right? And a lot of the things that came out of it. And one of them was reward systems in companies. And that's what they were talking about. This one company went, and it wasn't just like you said, the money, the title, or like, here's a little prize, right? Like it got into like how they want to be rewarded. And some of it was like, I would like to be almost like respected enough that I get to teach, right? Or I hold a lunch and learn, right? And to them, it's not a to-do, it's a reward because they know enough to do it, right? They've got this honor, right? And there was some other stuff that they had too. Like they apparently had this huge matrix that every quarter employees would do this, and it wasn't part of their review process. It was about how they were being rewarded and how they saw themselves wanting to be rewarded, and talk to their manager about the delta. It was really interesting how they were doing it. And I could see that being applied to teams. Cause like what you're saying, it's how people want to be rewarded sometimes is not how you think. I can talk to that from personal experience too. Some people would throw money at me, and that's not what I wanted.
Exactly. And I know we're running out of time here. I will say something that I've had this experience. I've had clients who've had this experience. They say, well, this doesn't work. Cause I sat my team down and I said, what do you want? And they didn't say anything.
Sorry.
I kid you not.
Of course they're not gonna, but okay.
Well, okay, so why? Why do you think they're not going to?
Because that's so loaded. I could see so many emotional reasons why they wouldn't, like depending on the manager. It could be like, how do you want to be rewarded? It might be something that I've talked about before that just didn't go over well. There could be so many factors. Goodness. Oh, Dana, are you there?
Can you hear me?
Yes. I was like getting worried.
No, it just disappeared on me, but go on.
All right. So I could just see it just being so loaded because it could be something they talked about before that didn't go over well. It could be the team has conferred amongst each other and like the manager hasn't set up an environment to foster that type of communication. It might be a very top down type of culture. I could see so many reasons why like they would just sit there and just look and just, I don't want to participate right now. Like they might do one-on-one. Some of them might be embarrassed by what they want because maybe their team members make fun of them because they, or let's say rewards don't go over well. Like they get a compliment in email and everybody's nice, like in person, but they're catty on the side. So they really don't want this. Like, yeah.
So here's the thing. It just so happens I wrote a blog about this that's appearing tomorrow on InPower Coaching.
Awesome. Okay.
And you're absolutely right. What's missing is a sense of psychological safety. In other words, when someone says, "Hey, tell me what you want to be rewarded," you're making two assumptions. One is that they know the answer to that, which if they're not emotionally intelligent and no one's ever asked them that, they may have no clue. You might have to actually help them think about what they want as a reward. That's number one. Number two is, it's because of the way the team has behaved or the way you're behaving in that moment, they don't feel safe. They're worried about how whatever they say will be used against them in some way. Then they're not going to answer the question. And so psychological safety, what the blog is about, is some research that Google did actually, that showed that teams that perform best have psychological safety. So go read the blog post tomorrow on InPowerCoaching.com. But, just in closing, because we're a couple minutes over here, what we should have done today? Today's Equal Pay Day for women.
Oh, we didn't cover it.
No. So we need to, first of all, women should have equal pay. And we should schedule that.
Yes. We will do something about equal pay, most definitely.
Look in the coffee break and find the next day that you and I can do that. And then let's tweet it out today, at least in celebration of Equal Pay Day.
Well, thank you, Dana. This was a lot of fun.
It was a lot of fun. And like I said, if you're interested in seeing the webinar, it's free. Go to InPowerCoaching.com under featured programs. There's one there for people skills, for technology industry, webinar free. So enjoy. Awesome. Right. Thank you, Mary.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.